In a world where carbs are your enemy, you need one man to help you fight your battles. That man is Jimmy.
Combating nutrition disinformation and general bull. It's Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com.
Hi, I'm Michelle.
And I'm Kara.
And we are Keto United.
We're known as the ladies that keep it real.
And speaking of keeping it real, we know that there are struggles within the keto lifestyle.
Absolutely. You get stalled. If you go and search the internet, there's so much information out there.
Right, and that's where we can come into play. If you have questions or you need personal support and accountability, that's what we are trained for.
Absolutely. We have been trained and certified by some of the world's leading keto experts.
But we've also been exactly where you are. So if you want to learn more about us, check out our website at ketounited.net or go to our mentor Jimmy Moore's podcast, episode number 1425 of the Livin' La Vida Low Carb Show.
She's got it.
Thanks.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Instagram Live. And we're here with another episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, how all the fun begins. We start off over on Instagram, so go follow me there at Livin' Low Carb Man, LivinLowCarbMan. Once you are there, you can engage live in the content just like Black Carnivore, Fat Fueled Fitness, my friend Stephanie, A.K. Hobbs, so many people coming in right now. Lindy just got here. Thank you guys for being here today on Jimmy Rants to engage live. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay for up to 24 hours. After 24 hours, poof, it does disappear. Go follow me on YouTube. You type in a keyword search, Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. Finally, the best of the best moments of this here podcast are in, or this here show are in podcast form. It's on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. Go check us out there. We put like a nice little slow groove music underneath the commentary. So it's a fun show. Go listen. Go leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. JimmyRants.com is the website. Today's Jimmy Rants is all about yet another one of the stalwarts who helped to create the keto community about losing his freaking mind. So the other day I did a whole Jimmy Rants, which is in podcast form. It officially became the longest podcast we've ever done with the Jimmy Rants concept. But it was all about Dr. William Davis, the guy that wrote the Wheat Belly book, basically going on an anti-keto over the long-term rampage. And he's all about ketosis in the short term. And so he's warning people of all these ill effects that are supposed to happen to you if you stay on a long-term ketogenic diet. Of course, I went piece by piece by piece of all of his criticisms about keto. So go back and listen to the podcast that I did on that. It's also on YouTube. You can watch the video. But we broke down most of what he was saying, and it came down to he was using very archaic research to support his view. Well, guess what, guys? It's happened again, and I don't know, is there something in the air? What's going on with all of these people that helped to build the keto community, which is strong here in 2019? Suddenly, you've got some of the pillars of it starting to go off their rocker. There's just no other way to put it. Dr. William Davis in Wheat Belly, he talked about a low-carb diet being beneficial to your health. And now he's saying just the opposite. Well, guess what? It's happened again. This time, it's happened with a gentleman who also wrote a book warning us about the ill health effects of grains. His name, Dr. David Perlmutter. So you may not know his name per se, but you definitely know about his book, Grain Brain. So he wrote Grain Brain. I think it came out around 2012. Wheat Belly came out in 2011, and Grain Brain, like I said, came like a year later. So around 2012-ish. Grain Brain came out, and it warned us about all the neurodegenerative effects that happen when you go on a diet that's filled with grains. And so I remember very vividly Dr. Perlmutter going on the Dr. Raj show. And this was a big moment, you guys, when Dr. Perlmutter went on the Dr. Raj show and he said, butter is back. And he got Dr. Oz to nod and applaud, and it was just a seminal moment in the keto movement that became now this keto juggernaut that everybody's trying it now. It was a huge, huge moment when Dr. Perlmutter was able to get that message out there in a big way. And he talked very openly about getting into a ketogenic state and restricting your carbohydrates and eating lots of healthy fats, that your brain is 70% fat, that you want to feed your brain, and blah, 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 blah. Now, he's going around talking about why you desperately need carbs. I'm not kidding you. The guy that wrote Grain Brain is telling people why you desperately need carbs. So this was on Dave Asprey's show, the Bulletproof Radio, and that was the title of the show, Why You Desperately Need Carbs, episode 553 of Bulletproof Radio, if you want to check it out. By the way, there is Dr. Perlmutter, so I know you've seen him before. And so he's been on Dave's show a few times, and he's came out with a revised version of Grain Brain, came out in December, and he talks about that we need carbs. And I'm going to get into this, you guys. It's unbelievable. So I have a bit of the transcript from the interview that I want to explain to you and share with you what he said. So I'm going to pick up in the interview where Dave, the host, is asking about carbs. And Dave asked him, can you clear up this carbohydrate confusion that's going on out there? So here's what Dr. Perlmutter said, and he had a very extended period in this transcript, so bear with me, and I probably will give commentary throughout. I'd like to have your listeners really tune in, because I don't know where we're going in our time together, but this is so important. Indeed, it is carbohydrate confusion, because we desperately need carbs. Okay, right off the bat, that is an untrue statement. We do not desperately need carbs. Physiologically, there is no requirement for carbohydrate consumption at all. You desperately need essential fatty acids. That's fat in your diet. If you didn't eat it, you would die. You desperately need protein, essential amino acids. If you didn't eat it, you would die. But you don't have a carbohydrate acid deficiency that you desperately, Dr. Perlmutter, need to eat carbohydrate. That simply doesn't exist. Now, he's going to share what he means by that here in a minute. But to say that carte blanche like that, your body desperately needs carbs, is just idiotic. It's not factual. So right away, he's not off to a good start. So many people adopt a ketogenic program. This is Dr. David Perlmutter still speaking. And they totally abandon their carbohydrate intake. And what happens? So number one, if you're eating a well-formulated ketogenic diet and your body tolerates higher amounts of carbohydrates, higher than zero, then you're not completely eliminating them. So this is the thing that I'm having trouble with some of these arguments about keto completely eliminating carbohydrates. They tried to do the same thing to the Atkins diet, which it never advocated for a complete elimination of carbs. They tried to do it with the paleo diet, never mentioned about the complete elimination of carbs. And same with keto. even the most insulin-resistant person is generally having about 20 to 30 grams of total carbohydrates in a day. So the whole notion that you're completely eliminating carbohydrates is just silly. Now, some of us, myself included, have chosen to do a mostly carnivorous diet, and I'm doing that through the template of a keto carnivore diet, and we do eliminate those carbs. So here's what Dr. Perlmutter puts forth as what will happen if you adopt a ketogenic plan and you totally abandon carbs. If you're just joining us, Dr. David Perlmutter wrote the book Grain Brain, one of the seminal books that put keto on the map and really led us down this keto revolution that we're seeing right now in our culture. And just like Dr. William Davis, who wrote Wheat Belly, that I shared the other day about his dismissing of ketogenic diets as dangerous to your health, now Dr. David Perlmutter, who wrote Grain Brain, which, by the way, he was one of my experts in keto clarity. If he truly believed all this stuff about keto, why did he lend his name to my book as an expert? And why did he say such positive things about nutritional ketosis when that book came out 5 years ago? Okay, maybe he's changed his mind, but to me, he's kind of making himself look silly in this. Anyway, that's where we are. So he was on the Dave Asprey Bulletproof Radio show, and I'm going over a transcript of things he said about carbohydrates. So far, he says we desperately need carbs. Here's what happens when you don't eat those desperately needed carbs. You feel crappy. You guys feel crappy eating a carbohydrate restricted diet? I'm on no carb. I've had basically no carbs to speak of in 2019 doing this keto carnivore. None. And I don't feel crappy. In fact, you guys see me on video every single day. When Instagram's not acting fluky like it did yesterday, you see me on multiple times a day. Do I ever look like I feel crappy? Because I don't. I don't feel crappy. You get constipated. Okay, Dr. Perlmutter, yeah. Drink plenty of water. If you need to, take a little bit of magnesium. That can help get things flowing, so to speak, again. Constipated is not an issue. Most of the time, people that get constipated on a ketogenic diet do so because they are dehydrated and they're not drinking near enough water. They get brain fog. Again, he is a neurologist. He knows you don't get brain fog from carbohydrate restriction. In fact, when he went on the Dr. Oz show several years back when his book came out and he was talking about butter is back, he was bragging about how limiting your carbohydrates is a good thing. Bragging about how having higher amounts of fat in your diet as a percentage of your total calories is a good thing for your mental health and your brain health. Brain fog? Dr. Perlmutter, you know better than most people that brain fog is a direct result of people who eat crappy garbage. So why are we dismissing keto in the same breath? Why aren't you continuing the great work you've been doing for many years through Grain Brain and all the ancillary things that have come after that? Brain Maker was another great book that he did. Why would you mention things like you get brain fog if you don't eat desperately needed carbohydrates? Come on. Guys, this is big. I don't understand what is going on with all these people that help to build the keto message suddenly coming out and losing their friggin' minds. Especially somebody like Dr. Perlmutter, who knows as a neurologist, very highly respected, that what he's sharing here is simply not true. They don't sleep well. Guys, I've been on keto carnivore for the entire year, and I wear this little ring, this little Oura ring that allows me to track how my sleep is going. I've had basically no carbohydrates, none this year. except the nominal ones that would be in the glycogen stores of the animals that I'm consuming. And yet my sleep is always good. I get at least 3 hours of REM sleep. I get 1 hour at least of deep sleep every single night. So if I'm supposed to not sleep well because I'm not having carbs in my diet, why am I sleeping well, Dr. Perlmutter? Now I realize it's anecdotal, doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but I'm not the only one. A lot of you guys who eat a carbohydrate restricted diet or a carnivore diet, you're not having those desperately needed carbs. You're doing just fine in your sleep. In fact, you're probably getting less total sleep because your body doesn't have to repair from all of those horrible effects of eating carbohydrates. Doesn't make sense. The next complaint. They're agitated. Yeah, we're agitated because people like you who should know better are telling people that they need carbs. And it's simply wrong. Wrong on so many levels. And it's all because they fail to understand that we have to be quite specific when we talk about carbohydrates. Okay, we'll get specific, Dr. Perlmutter. We are desperately in need of fiber in the diet. Okay. Is fiber good in the diet? That's definitely a debate for another day. But briefly, I think there are possibly some good benefits that could come from having some fiber in the diet. Am I totally convinced of that? No. I'm actually seeing some really good benefits from the elimination of all carbohydrates, which includes the fiber carbohydrates. But Dr. Perlmutter is kind of on this fiber kick. And he says, by definition, fiber in the diet is a complex carbohydrate that we don't metabolize, yet it is metabolized by the gut bacteria. Here's where I disagree with him. If someone is relatively metabolically healthy and has insulin sensitivity, then their bodies can handle higher amounts of not just fiber, but all carbohydrates so that their body gets the benefits, the gut bugs get the fiber that he says that they need and all of that. But what happens when your metabolism is compromised? What happens if you have insulin resistance? Is that fiber benign in your system? Because according to him, these complex carbohydrates in the form of fiber in the diet are not metabolized. Want to bet? I know, and I've talked to many experts over the years. One such one is a registered nurse that worked with Dr. Atkins in his clinic for 30 years. Her name is Jackie Eberstein. I remember having conversations with Jackie, asking her about the people that have very, very low carbohydrate tolerance levels. And she said, oh yeah, some of the patients were so sensitive to carbohydrates that they actually had to eliminate a lot of the green leafy and non-starchy vegetables because those, get this guys, those people were still getting a blood sugar and insulin response, even from the healthy carbohydrates. So let's not pretend, Dr. Perlmutter, that just because it is a fiber carb, a complex carbohydrate, that we don't necessarily metabolize them, because some people do. And I think it's irresponsible to put out this message, well, fiber's a freebie, just everybody eat all the fiber you want, it's no big deal, it's not going to have any consequences on your... Yes, it will. Yes, it will. We've seen it. When we throw that baby out with the bathwater, talking about eating a basically carbohydrate restricted ketogenic diet, we set the stage for not nurturing those 100 trillion organisms that live within us that really depend on your food choices, to nurture them, to allow you to not just be healthy, but be healthier, to be able to combat the risk of illness moving forward. So again, I think we are in the infancy stage of truly understanding what the gut microbiome is all about. I don't think we have all the answers to it yet. Do we have some clues? Absolutely. We know that sugar and refined carbohydrates are incredibly unhealthy for the gut microbiome. We know the gut bacteria just flourish when you feed it this crappy garbage as I describe it. What we don't know, and what he's speaking so assuredly about, is what's the impact on varying metabolisms? What's the impact of someone with insulin sensitivity versus someone with insulin resistance? What's the impact there? What about someone who has leaky gut? What about someone who, when they consume leafy greens even, or non-starchy vegetables, carbohydrates, they get bloated? What's going on there? Why would their body respond in that way while other people handle it just fine? I don't think we know enough about this on an individual basis for us to make this just across the board. Everybody should be eating more fiber carbs because your body doesn't metabolize them. That's very short-sighted from someone who's extremely intelligent in this space. Dr. Perlmutter, I'm incredibly disappointed, bud. Really am. And I've known him for a long time. He's been very kind to me over the years. I've interviewed him a few times on my podcast, and he's been a part of writing blurbs for the back of my books. But this is ridiculous. This turn of events, this change of mind, doesn't make any sense to me, at least so far with your arguments for what you're saying now. In other words, we need a preventative program. If you want to make it more simple, then perhaps if you talk about the notion of net carbohydrates, which is fiber minus the simple carbs and minus sugar, alcohol. So again, I'm not in favor of net carbs. I think fiber carbs do matter. You have to count them. You have to add them in to the carbohydrate, because while fiber carbs are certainly metabolized slower in the body, it's not that they're not metabolized at all, as he makes the case. They are metabolized, and especially in someone with insulin resistance, it's going to be metabolized at a slower rate, but it's still going to be metabolized, which is why Jackie Eberstein was talking about Dr. Atkins's patients seeing a blood sugar and an insulin rise because of the damage that's been done to their metabolism. This is just not good, guys. So we want to understand that we do need fiber. No, you don't. You don't need any carbohydrate. Is it beneficial? I think the jury is still out on that, whether having this added fiber that he's mentioning is a good thing or a bad thing. But we just don't know yet. The studies have not been done. We've eaten fiber. In fact, looking back at our ancestors, they ate a heck of a lot of fiber, Dr. Perlmutter notes, as much as 100 to 120 grams of fiber a day. Who of you that just heard 100 to 120 grams of fiber a day, how many of you just recoiled of all the gas and all the bloating and all the everything coming out the back end that might produce in you? To me, that much fiber is overload. I'm in favor of fiber to the degree of feeding the gut microbiome if people are concerned, but 100 to 120 grams of fiber a day, I would never get off the toilet. Sorry to be TMI there, but that's just, no. No. They had many bowel movements a day. Oh, I bet they did. Our ancestors had many bowel movements a day. Hey, let's stop eating so much fiber. Yeah, no. So they ate that much and they had many bowel movements a day. He doesn't say here whether it was good bowel movements. What if it was diarrhea all day? Because to a modern day metabolism that has not adapted to being able to handle that much fiber, that would be a disaster waiting to happen. And they nurtured their gut bacteria. Well, we don't really know what they did to their gut bacteria because they weren't measuring gut bacteria back then. We are extrapolating based on what we can now see in science, extrapolating that because they ate a mostly real whole foods-based diet and they didn't have the damage that this, and this has happened. But the monkey wrench in this whole theory, Dr. Perlmutter, is you forget modern day society has ding dongs, ho-hos, Coca-Cola, Doritos, and all of this stuff that truly damaged our bodies. So that now, when we try to have that much fiber in our diet, it doesn't come without consequences. It doesn't mean the fiber in and of itself was a bad thing, but it does mean that in the right circumstance, in what we're talking about here, modern day living, having 100 to 120 grams of fiber a day would be irresponsible of anybody to recommend that to someone with insulin resistance and other issues. Dr. Perlmutter continues, so it's a huge mistake, and if that helps to unwind or unpack this notion of carbohydrate confusion, I'm really happy because, again, we want people to eat a lot of good fat and a lot of good fiber with not a lot of protein. So he's still saying that he's all about healthy fats. He's all about moderating protein. But then he wants this gobs and gobs of fiber to be in your diet. Would that make you ketogenic? Would that be good for your body? And without him giving us any kind of notion of what that looks like on a plate, what does 100 to 120 grams of fiber look like on the plate of a ketogenic dieter? I don't know. Obviously, healthy fats, we know where those come from, and he's got some things to say about fat here in a minute. Minimized on the protein, moderated down on the protein. So he's got those things nailed. But where do we draw the line with carbohydrate consumption? Does everybody need to be eating this gobs and gobs more fiber? Is there any situation where someone would not do well? What if they start to get bloating and start to get gas and start to get diarrhea and all of these things that I just talked about earlier? What if those things start to manifest themselves? Do you still hold the notion that we desperately need carbs, which is what he said earlier in the interview with Dave Asprey? I don't think so. I think you would tailor it to that individual. So thus, if it's tailored to the individual, why would you make such a blanket statement for everybody that we desperately need carbs, when at the end of the day, we desperately don't need a single carb at all? Right? All right, so let me skip ahead. Oh, this next part. Guys, get ready. This was the biggest shocker in the entire interview. If you're just joining us, we are going over a transcript of Dr. David Perlmutter, the guy that wrote Grain Brain, one of the seminal books in the keto space, back in 2012. He put it out there on Dave Asprey's show recently that the body desperately needs carbs, and he's describing what that means, lots of fiber, and if we don't get the fiber, we can't feed the gut microbiome and you can't be healthy. Okay, so that's where we are. In fact, this recommendation that we're making is absolutely not an Atkins redux. We don't want you sucking down pork rinds and meat all day. Well, I'm having just meat and animal-based foods all day, Dr. Perlmutter. So am I being a bad boy? Yeah, I think I am. Here's the part that got me to just about hurl. You ready? It's going to shock you. Here it comes. Dr. Perlmutter still speaking. I mean, the China study, Dr. T. Colin Campbell drew correlation between red meat consumption and a risk for colorectal cancer. And as a matter of fact, does Dr. Perlmutter agree with that? You bet I do. Why? Because first of all, there are some downsides of taking in too much protein with reference to certain biochemical pathways like mTOR. Ultimately, you're talking about too much cysteine, too much methionine, the amino acids that come from eating too much protein. You heard me right. He just cited vegan propaganda as his evidence for his position about fiber and about red meat. Let me read it again. The China study by Dr. T. Colin Campbell draws a correlation between red meat consumption and the risk for colorectal cancer. Do I agree with that? You bet I do. I don't know where to start with that one because he knows better. Dr. Perlmutter has been out there trumpeting the cause of the ketogenic diet for the past 5-6 years. And yet he makes such a stupid statement based on a book that if you just do a cursory Google search, you will see has been thoroughly debunked. The China study is a joke. Now, the vegans all point to it as the holy grail of what their message is. But if you just look up the work of Denise Minger and Chris Kresser and different ones, they basically took down bit by bit by bit the China study. It's not an actual study. It's just a book that he called The China Study. The real China study has nothing to do with any of the conclusions that Dr. T. Colin Campbell put in his book, which, by the way, I have invited T. Colin Campbell to come on the Live and La Vida Low Carb show several times for an interview. He has rejected all of my requests. Gee, I can't imagine why. But Dr. Perlmutter, quoting the China study, correlating, not saying cause and effect, but correlating red meat consumption with colorectal cancer. Dr. Davis the other day talked about his concerns for colon cancer. And it's nonsense. It's total nonsense. So I think that's it. Oh, let me finish. He had some more comments about red meat. The dietary analysis has a question of how often do you eat red meat? How much red meat do you eat? So that they're ultimately able to categorize people into eating high amounts of red meat versus lower amounts. Now, red meat, by and large, is one of the most dangerous foods on the planet. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Dr. Perlmutter, do you honestly believe red meat is one of the most dangerous foods on the planet? How about refined grains, Mr. Grain Brain? How about refined sugar? How about seed oils that are rancid, sitting on grocery store shelves now, getting exposed to artificial light and the inflammatoriness of those things on your health? How, pray tell, do you categorize red meat as, by and large, one of the most dangerous foods on the planet? This is completely ridiculous. And you know it. This is the thing, you guys. He knows what he's sharing is absolutely false, and it leads me to believe he's either lost his rocker or somebody's gotten to him and said, stop talking about that keto stuff. Because this doesn't make any sense at all. None whatsoever. So he describes what he means by red meat, and by that I mean the factory-farmed red meat that typifies the type of red meat that people generally consume. Okay, but that's not what you said. You said, by and large, red meat is one of the most dangerous foods on the planet. So if you're now going to put a qualifier in front of it and say, well, of course I'm referring to the factory farm. Not everybody eats factory farm meats. There's a lot of us that choose to have the grass-fed and really good quality meats. But when you make a stupid statement like, by and large, red meat is the most dangerous food on the planet, you're just leading people down a rabbit hole of fear that they can't get themselves out of because they're not hearing what you're saying. If you meant factory-farmed red meat, then be very abundantly clear by saying factory-farmed red meat is one of the most dangerous foods on the planet. I would disagree with that too, because I think sugar and refined grains and refined vegetable oils, seed oils, are far worse than any conventional meat ever would be. But that said, mean what you say and say what you mean, because that wasn't clear here. If you're consuming a food that comes from an animal that's been antibiotic exposed, that's been glyphosate-rich grains, and has been stressed through its existence, there's no alchemy that occurs here. You're going to create a food product food product that is absolutely threatening to your health. On the other hand, if you choose to be omnivorous and choose to eat some red meat on occasion, then make sure it is grass-fed beef or other type of meat, really emulating how these animals did live prior to this industrialization of the food supply. By and large, though, I would indicate that the more plant-based your diet is, the better off you will be. If you choose to have a garnish of red meat. You ever seen a garnish? When I worked in college, I worked at this restaurant chain called Shoney's. And whenever we got finished putting the plate all together, we put this little garnish of a kale leaf on the plate. I guess it made it look pretty or whatever. The kale leaf was that big. So Dr. Perlmutter is saying treat grass-fed meat as a garnish on the plate. I want to know, what does the plate look like? Where, pray tell, do you get your protein from other than that little garnish of the red meat? Where? How about where or what kinds of carbohydrate are you consuming? Is it mostly like vegetable carbs? Is that what we're talking about? To get to that 100 to 120 grams of fiber? And then you're putting fat ostensibly on those because he is in favor of fat. This just doesn't make any sense. And the Grain Brain author has apparently gone from keto to plant-based. And I go, say what? What in the world is going on? Wild fish as well as some free-range chickens. Eggs, I think, are really handy food and really good as well. Now, Dave asked him, this sounds like a plant-based diet. Are you sure you want to go there? And he said, no, I'm not saying to become totally plant-based. Dave Asprey, the host, said, it scares me when people say the more plant-based you are, because they're fearful of pushing veganism. And so Dr. Perlmutter says, no, I'm not pushing veganism at all. I said the diet, by and large, should be mostly plant-based. Well, guess what? Dr. Perlmutter, whether you pushed veganism or not, you are now basically discouraging people from eating animal-based foods. You're discouraging people from eating a very carbohydrate-restricted diet. And quite frankly, a lot of us need to be on a very low-carb, moderate protein, high-fat diet that would produce ketones. At least Dr. Perlmutter, unlike Dr. William Davis the other day, didn't say anything about the state of ketosis being necessarily harmful to your health. Dr. Davis made that very clear. Come in and out of nutritional ketosis if you're going to eat that way. Do it for a short period of time, but don't do it over the long term. At least Dr. Perlmutter didn't say that. But in a way, he did say that because he's encouraging us to be consuming 100 to 120 grams of fiber a day. And I don't know about you, but my carb tolerance level is not much more than, say, 30 grams of total carbohydrate. So if I have 100 to 120 grams of fiber in a day, guess what? I'm not in nutritional ketosis anymore. I'm not getting any of the benefits that come from being in a state of nutritional ketosis. Is that what you want, Dr. Perlmutter? Is that the end goal here? To eat a mostly plant-based diet for your ketogenic lifestyle? And even my friend and co-host on Keto Talk, Dr. Will Cole, who wrote a whole book called Ketotarian, all about doing a more plant-based type of keto diet. Even in his book, he's not recommending 100 to 120 grams of carbs coming from fiber in a day. As the gut health specialist that he is, as a functional medicine practitioner, even he would not recommend that high amount of fiber. And yet here is Dr. David Perlmutter, Mr. Grain Brain himself, Mr. Butter is back on Dr. Oz himself, going out there and telling us all we're not eating enough fiber. We're making ourselves less healthy. We have all these dastardly effects that are supposedly happening to us when we don't eat carbs. And the fact is, he's just plain wrong. The fact is, none of the things that he outlined that I shared about here today on this Jimmy Rants, none of it is accurate. And I'm sorry, Dr. Perlmutter. You've done some great things in this space. We are all so very grateful for your work and your books and what you've contributed to make the ketogenic community what it is today. But you have done a great disservice to us all, now adding in a further element of confusion. And I know you went on Dave Asprey's show to try to clear up the carbohydrate confusion, but all you've done is made it a whole lot more convoluted and confusing than it's ever been before. Shame on you. Shame on you. How dare you? Now show me a randomized controlled clinical trial that shows all of these things that you said are happening. Show me the evidence. Because until that evidence shows up, you really have no business trying to flip the script here. Do you have a new plant-based book or something coming out? What's in the air that's making all of these stalwarts of the keto world suddenly flip the script and say, oh, no, I was never about very low-carb diets. I was never about ketosis. That's not a good idea. Yeah, you were. You and Dr. William Davis were both a big part of this community and making it what it was. All right, I'm out of adjectives to describe my angst about this. I want to see what you guys have to say. Welcome in, welcome in. This is a biggie today, guys, so I'm glad you're here joining us on this Jimmy Rants. Hello, Elle. Thanks for being here. Black Carnivore, I love your Jimmy Rants. You've got the best show yet. Well, thank you, especially when I get fired up like this one here today. Plenty to talk about. Wirehead says, follow the money. It's that simple. What money? Are you making the claim Dr. Perlmutter got paid to say this? Not sure what money would be involved. Bonnie says, grains can carry molds, which are very bad for your gut. Yeah, and I don't think Dr. Perlmutter is talking about consuming grains, but he definitely wants you to get lots and lots of fiber from the vegetables that you consume. Lindy says, what the? Yeah, exactly, Lindy. The author needed some cash, says Wirehead. Well, his books were perennial New York Times bestsellers, Grain Brain and Brain Maker. I mean, trust me, he did well for himself from a financial standpoint. So I can't imagine, because somebody else brought that up the other day about Dr. William Davis, that he did it because he needed money. Neither one of these guys are hurting for money. Their book sales alone gave them a huge windfall of money. So I'm not sure that would be the motivation. So I don't know what's going on. I stopped following Perlmutter after he was on Asprey's podcast, says Heather. Yeah, this was pretty shocking, to say the least. And I had several people send me, hey, have you heard what Dr. Perlmutter is talking about on Dave Asprey? So I went and got the transcript and listened, and I was in as much shock as a lot of you guys. He must have a book, says Grandma Does Keto. Yeah, I don't know. It makes sense that he would, but I don't know. As an author, I'm an author. I've been out there. I've got 8 books and about 3 more coming in the next year. And I could not imagine having written Keto Clarity to ever come out, unless there's some major evidence that says otherwise, ever come out with a book that is the antithesis of what I wrote about in Keto Clarity. I just couldn't do that. Now, again, save for major new evidence that would come out of the scientific world, you just don't make that flip like that. You guys that follow my work and have read that book, you would think I've lost my friggin' mind if I came out and said, yeah, I said to carbohydrate restrict all those years and moderate your protein and eat lots of fat and healthy fats and eat it from a real food basis. But sorry, oops. I really meant that you needed to eat a more vegan style diet and to do it in the way that I'm prescribing in my brand new book. I would never do that. And yet that's apparently what's going on here with Dr. Perlmutter. And then Dave recommends that people who can't afford grass-fed beef should go semi-vegetarian. Well, I know that notion's been out there a while too, that they are now saying these factory farm meats are so bad that they'd rather you eat a mostly vegetarian style diet than to ever have the factory farm meats. And again, I don't think we have enough of the evidence to support that claim. They need to go look up the work of Peter Ballerstadt. So Pete has been out there kind of talking about this whole notion that grass-fed beef is not necessarily this grand poobah when it comes to animal-based foods, that even grain-fed ruminants can have great health properties. So this kind of vilification of grain-feeding animals needs to stop. So go look him up, Peter Ballerstadt. You can look him up on YouTube. I'm sure some of his lectures are out there. Fire Team Whiskey, what? This is crazy. Dr. Davis and Dr. Perlmutter's books were great and thoughtful books that were based on the updated science in this area. Exactly. That's what makes it shocking. Keto Glow, Brittany says, I didn't know about all those essential carbs. No, there are no essential carbs. Hey, Jessica. Jessica says, this has to be about the money. I get a Facebook ad about Dr. Davis's Wheat Belly diet programs for purchase daily. I mean, if you're buying Wheat Belly, he's talking about eating a carbohydrate restricted diet. If you're buying Dr. Perlmutter's Grain Brain, it's talking about getting into a ketogenic state. None of this stuff that either one of these gentlemen are talking about in 2019 is in their books. If you read their books, it reads like something I would write. But they flipped the script. I should be dead from my carbohydrate deficiency, says Jessica. Yeah. You and me both, my dear. You and me both. Fat Fueled Fitness says, who's bribing this guy? Yeah, it's almost to the point that you wonder, does a major vegan have some dirt on Dr. Perlmutter to make him go this direction? None of this makes sense with Dr. Davis or Dr. Perlmutter. All right, so here it is. If you hear Jimmy Moore ever come out and talk in this manner, that is the complete antithesis of everything I've talked about in my work for a decade and a half. If you hear me come out and just kind of go exactly a 180 of everything I'm talking about, then you know I've been bribed. They've got Christine captured and won't let her go until I do this. You know something bad has happened. Because it won't. It won't. Thank God for you, Jimmy. Thank you for addressing all this silliness. You're welcome. Val says, this is interesting. I'm wondering who is behind it. Yeah. I feel better than I have felt in my entire life, says Fat Fueled Fitness, and you're very well ketogenic, that's for sure. I know I feel better, says Val. OMG, I feel awesome without the carbs, says Ashton. Yeah, a lot of us do. No brain fog here. Not even close, says Anita. Feeling crappy, maybe TMI, but I barely have any crap because my body is actually using all those non-carbs nutrients, says Beth. I feel the best I've ever felt with low carbs, no constipation, mental clarity, says Bonnie. I feel great, no constipation. This guy's been bought by Weight Watchers. I don't know about Weight Watchers or Big Pharmaceutical or somebody. It's just so sad, says P-Boy. This is so weird to hear this, says Keisha. Agreed. I was shocked when I heard this turn of events, both with Dr. Perlmutter and Dr. Davis. Jessica says, why are these guys selling their souls? I don't know, Jess. Let's see. Whoa. My screen jumped. Hang on, guys. Carnivore seems to be agreeing with you. Thank you. I am enjoying Keto Carnivore. Appreciate that. There is nothing that anyone can tell me that would make me stop being in ketosis. I feel way too good to ever stop doing this lifestyle, and it makes it so hard to be around people eating a sad diet, says Fat Fuel Fitness. Paul Mason addresses the absence of fiber as being highly beneficial. Yeah, I interviewed this gentleman named Konstantin Monastersky. This is like 1,000,000 years ago on the Livin' La Vida Low Carb show. But he has a book if you want to learn about fiber and why it's not as big of a deal in your health as people are making it out to be, like Dr. Perlmutter. Go read it. It's called The Fiber Menace by Konstantin Monastersky. I think you'll enjoy that. It's sad news to hear, says MTB Messiah, but I hope he will come back. I don't know. Once you go down this rabbit hole, I don't know how you come back. Oh, I was so wrong. It wouldn't be the same. So disappointing coming from him, since it was his book, Grain Brain, that started me down this way of eating, says Liz. Yeah, a lot of people read that book. Like I said, it was a multiple Uber #1 New York Times best-selling book. So I guess the conclusion you come out of that is, was it all about just the money? Was it about just making a quick buck off of a book? I don't believe that. But how do you conclude otherwise if he's flipping the script on what he's believed before? This is the kind of thing that will cause people to stay away from keto and or leave keto. The scare tactic so disappointing. Ashton, that's why I am addressing it here today on Jimmy Rants. How many people would have benefited from keto, but now today, because he's going on major podcasts. I mean, Dave Asprey's got one of the top, if not the top, health podcast online. And he's going on there and talking this kind of way. It's very sad. There are many videos on YouTube titled Why I'm No Longer Vegan, Many Health Issues and Malnutrition, says Alberto. Exactly. And he would make the argument, Alberto, well, I'm not pushing a plant-based diet. I'm not pushing veganism. I'm just saying if you're going to eat meat, make sure it's just a little garnish, like that little kale leaf that I used to put on the plates at Shoney's, and eat mostly vegetables. Okay, great. But how is that not moving people towards plant-based diet? Why would all the trillions of gut bacteria all need that fiber? It just doesn't make any sense, says Grandma Does Keto. Humans didn't always have access to fiber, certainly not regularly. Yeah, that notion that 100 to 120 grams of fiber is what our hunter-gatherer ancestors would have consumed. Where? Because most of the time when they gathered in between hunting for animals, when they gathered, it was just whatever they could find. It wasn't gobs and gobs and gobs of fiber. And I bet you on the days that they have a big animal kill, and when they cook up that animal, they wouldn't have hardly any fiber at all on those days. They would gorge themselves on the fat of that animal. None of this makes sense. Fat Fuel Fitness says body snatchers are getting these doctors and they're replacing them with paid robots. Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because I was thinking, okay, they're like zombies. Were they bitten by a zombie and now they've become a zombie? So uh-oh. I don't know what happened there, guys. Sorry about that. I was sitting here like, okay, it froze. I think the zombies got to my iPhone. I was like, oh no, let's don't have the Instagram happen again, the problems from yesterday. That would be my luck in the midst of this epic rant. Val says, how can they prove they ate that much fiber? Exactly, Val. They don't know. This is weird, guys. So sorry about that. It froze up again. Anyway, let me see if there's any other comments. I would be in the ER if I ate that much fiber in a day. Crazy, crazy. Yes, I'm talking about Perlmutter. Thank you for that. Anyway, I think you guys get the drift here. Dr. David Perlmutter wrote the book Grain Brain, and he's now out there making the case for having a mostly plant-based diet. And I'm here to tell you that's utterly ridiculous, that he has now shifted so dramatically from promoting keto and going on big shows like the Dr. Oz show to now pushing a mostly plant-based type of diet. I just don't get it. And Dr. Perlmutter, you know better. You know that what you're sharing is just wrong. There's no other way to put it. It's just plain wrong. And I, for one, wanted to set the record straight, which I was happy to do here today on Jimmy Rants. And hopefully those of you in the keto space, maybe you were inspired by Dr. Perlmutter because of his books. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're getting the benefits. And what has happened to Dr. Perlmutter is anyone's guess. I have no idea. All I know is that I'm going to continue to do keto, currently doing keto carnivore. No carbohydrates in my diet, Dr. Perlmutter, and I am doing just fine. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website where all the fun begins. You pop on over to Instagram. So if you're not following me on Instagram, you really should, because we do several of these kinds of videos every single day. So go follow me there at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, it's up there for you to engage live, just like all these people did today. So thanks for being here today, you guys. It's up for 24 hours on replay, which a bunch of people watch this on replay every day. So go follow me on Instagram. If you missed the Instagram live, it's all good. If you missed the replay, it's all good, because we throw all the past episodes up on YouTube. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. Finally, we have the best of the best moments of this here show in podcast form. It's the Jimmy Rants podcast over on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. JimmyRants.com is the website. All right, I'm going to get to a few more of the comments that I couldn't get there. Black Carnivore, are these folks getting paid to flip their position? Who's bankrolling this? It doesn't make any sense where all these coordinated attacks against keto are coming from. Well, Black Carnivore, we know a lot of the coordinated attacks are indeed coordinated from the vegans and coordinated from low-fat diet companies that have been losing money as a result of this. So we do know that's where it's coming from on that end of things. Now, Dr. Perlmutter and Dr. Davis, I don't know what their deal is other than maybe they have a new book coming out that would be articulating a lot of these kind of things. Somebody else, Liz says, I think there's something in the air because I'm seeing a gradual shift with Dr. Mark Hyman too. Yeah, I've never fully bought into Dr. Hyman being on the keto end of things. He's talked about fat in a positive way, but he's never really made that full dive over to ketosis. So yeah, I've always had my doubts about him. Don't let the body snatchers get you. Yeah, I don't know why I froze there. A couple of times I got frozen there. It makes me wonder if they've been honest since day one. Yeah, Alberto, that's the thing. I know Dr. Bill Davis and I know Dr. David Perlmutter personally. Have spoken with them in person. Obviously, I've had both of them on my podcasts many, many times. And they both have been nothing but kind to me. Both lent their names to my books. Both have been quoted extensively. Dr. Davis in Cholesterol Clarity, and I believe even in Keto Clarity, and Dr. Perlmutter definitely in Keto Clarity as my moment of clarity. Quote, people, they've done good work. And let's not fool ourselves. They've made a lot of money off of the books that they've sold. And I wonder, and I'm just thinking out loud here, I wonder if maybe because those books have slowed down in sales, all right, well, let's move to the next thing. And they just kind of make up something else to get their names back out there. And then they come out with another book. I don't know what it is. It just, none of it makes sense to me. Could he still be maybe taking keto but making it vegan? He could. Keto QK, for sure. That's for sure. But I don't know. Thank God for Jimmy telling it like it is. Thank you, Yellow Dyed. You state that they made plenty of money from past books, but I'm sure they don't feel it was enough. Well, Marisa, that's probably true. As an author, you always want to put information out there that you believe in your heart of hearts. It's not ever been, for me as an author, about the money. I'm not upset about the money at all, but it's never been about that for me. It's about getting resources in the hands of people that will change their lives forever. And for Dr. Davis, that was Wheat Belly. For Dr. Perlmutter, that was Grain Brain. For me, it was Keto Clarity and all the other books. So my motivation is education. And if your motivation is money, you need to get out sooner than later. He basically wants us to eat extra glyphosate, aka Roundup, trying to eat that much fiber, says Joette. Yeah. I loved Grain Brain, Brain Maker, and Wheat Belly. Hearing this makes me so sad. Keisha, you and me both. You're not frozen on our end. Oh, did you still see me on my end? I just saw, it just was weird. The video's coming through just fine. Keep going. Yeah, it froze on my end. But thank you guys. You're being watched by them, so be careful, says Liz. The almighty dollar drives them to shift. Yeah, I don't know, Ann. All right, guys, I'm running out of time. About 15 more seconds. Thank you so much for joining me for this interesting Jimmy Rants here today. I got a whole lot more to come, you guys, so we'll be back a little bit later on with more Jimmy Rants just for you. So until next time, we'll see you then.